Hello, everyone. Today I'm going to be discussing, presenting a processing kind of tutorial. And I'm also trying to show a bigger aperture telescope, a 16-inch IDK that belongs to my friend Jim. It is a AG optical telescope. It is amazing. And it's also one of a kind because it was a prototype that he got. It's a fantastic telescope. And Jim is a very experienced astronomer. He knows a lot more about collimation and mechanics than I do. I am the guy who usually processes data, and kind of that's my expertise when it comes to this image. I helped him choose the target. Helped him choose the target. I kind of helped him with some suggestions on framing, but ultimately he captured the data with a IDK 16-inch f6.4. I believe the focal length is about 2800 millimeters. It is using a QHY 600 mono Chroma filters, and in this situation he binned the image 2x2 and used dithering to bring back the resolution. So he imaged the 2x2, but by dithering he could recapture the resolution back at full resolution at 61 megapixels. So today we're going to be looking at how I process images, and I will do about 90% of what I usually do with the SHO image. The only thing that I won't show is the color mixing and the other things that I do, but I'll show you the results and how that goes. It is something that I built up in time in a bunch of tools, specifically Photoshop. And that will probably be available maybe later on to Patreon subscribers when I finally launch my Patreon channel. But I know a few of you wanted to see how I process data, so let's get into it. If you want details about my computer, it is a Intel 10980XE 18-core 36-thread CPU, 128 gigs of RAM. I think it's 3600 megahertz DDR4. I use NVMe drives, I think a Samsung 980 Pros, a few of them, and I also dedicate 32 gigs of my RAM to memory for PixInsight, so it's fast. It's not the fastest in the world, but it's very fast nevertheless. And for my GPU, I used to use a 1080 Ti, but now I use an NVIDIA 3090. It is very fast, and if you know how to set it up to do the AI operations that we needed to do, it is very good and very fast. So let's get into PixInsight and see what we're doing. So in here, I have the Soul Nebula. It is taken with a large IDK telescope. The reason I talk about large aperture telescopes because aperture brings detail, brings light. There is no replacement for that. You can probably try to get like a 1000mm telescope and a small 1600 chip and get somewhat similar, but the resolution is going to be soft and not even close. So that's why we like large aperture telescopes. They're expensive for a reason. And also the star size on this telescope is very, very good. As you can see, corner to corner, sharp stars. Mechanically, this telescope is impeccable. You would expect that from AG Optical, Planewave, and other manufacturers. This does not disappoint. The only thing that I've done with these files is to each individual file, these are not stretched, these are linear. I applied the blur exterminator with the default settings. If you don't know how to get to the default settings, just press this little thing here. It will reset it. So now, this is the sulfur data. Somewhat noisy, but fine. It is again shot at 2x2 and then brought back through drizzle to 1x1. HA, beautiful, stunning. This kind of little formation in the Soul Nebula looks great. This little alien-looking dude looks good. Even oxygen is decent. So what do we do next? It's pretty simple. We stack. We do LRGB composite. So in this case, I'll be doing an SHO. I've aligned the frames. So if you don't know how to align that, you go to Process, All Processes, Star Alignment. You choose your main frame, let's say HA, and then you choose the subsequent subfiles and you press the circle, and then they're aligned. In my case, I've aligned them before. So let's combine these. We have sulfur, red, HA in green, oxygen in blue. Thus SHO, or the Hubble palette. We press apply. Now, depending on your computer, it might take a while. Mine's pretty fast, even though we're talking about a 61 megapixel image. And we're done. I'm going to close these. We don't need these anymore. I'm going to stretch this using Control A, or we can also press this little nuke button here or here. It looks great. I don't like the way the image looks, so I'm going to rotate it. Go to Geometry, rotate counterclockwise, clockwise, excuse me, and there's my image. What else don't I like? Well, it needs to be cropped. So we go to Processes, All Processes, Dynamic Crop. And we just choose what we want to crop it with. I'll take a little bit off. The reason is because of the way it's been framed, the way it's been kind of closed loop slowed, it needs that. So I'm going to leave this for now. I'm just going to call it SHO. And I'm going to copy it. And I'm going to remove the stars using Star Exterminator in All Processes. This is a very, very cool tool that Rusell Crowman built. It's pretty fast. So let's remove the stars. Let me also make my face smaller. Okay, so now the stars are being removed. Again, depending on your computer, if you set up your GPU to do this, it might be fast, it might be slow. If you use your CPU, I highly advise you not to. It's gonna use it to the extremes. It's not meant for this. That's why the GPUs, especially NVIDIA GPUs, are really good. The CUDA cores and the Tensor cores are gonna make it happen pretty fast. 29 seconds for a 61 megapixel image. Pretty decent. So, as you'll see throughout the tutorial today, I like simple things that happen fast. I don't like overcomplicating things. That's not my style. So, this image is not stretched, but the stars have been removed. And I actually think this looks good. There's a little bit of magenta. I'll remove that. So now we're going to stretch the image. Again, not the most complicated. You open the histogram transformation from Processes, Intensity Transformations, and History Transformation. You press the little nuke button, and then you drag the triangle to the middle of this histogram transformation window. Then you drag it onto the image. Congratulations, you've stretched the image. We don't need this for now. Actually, let me stretch the stack as well. I'll need that in a bit. You can choose to do more defined star stretching, but we're not going to get into that now. So what do we do now? First, we got to get rid of the green. I'm not a fan, and we do that by going to Processes, All Processes, S, C, and R. We choose green. Even reset it, don't have to do anything. Drag it on top. Boom, the green is gone. Now we're going to get rid of this magenta stuff. And it's actually very simple. You press Control I or Command I to invert the image. And then you do the same thing. You do SCNR on green because green inversed is magenta. That's pretty cool. We've done that. The green is gone. We're in the good Hubble palette. Now this is where I start playing with the intensity of the image by going to Processes, Intensity Transformations, Curves Transformations. This used to be a terrifying name in Photoshop because it was hard. We apply the preview, which is this little circle. Then we apply what's called an S-curve. We bring the highlights and midtones hot. We pull the darks a little bit. Not too much. If you do too much, it's going to look weird. We don't want to do that. And Peter, if you're watching, don't do it. You usually do this. Okay, this looks relatively decent. Let's pull some of the saturation. A little bit, not too much. We're going to apply it once. It's starting to look great. I like it. It looks pretty good. Now, this is where I think you have to be really careful. Don't do too much. It'll be a bit much. So a little bit, you can do a bit more maybe. Just a tiny bit. Be really careful with the saturation. This is where it starts going into crazy territory. Now, I'm kind of happy with this, but when I pulled all this information, you can see that some of the details and the dynamic range has been modified. So let's bring it back. What do? Go to Processes, Mask Generation, Range Selection. And we're trying to build a mask to highlight the nebulosity. So we're going to look at this part here, and we're going to focus on that. So we just drag this little thing until we get the mask we want. Let's say this is pretty good. You do a bit of smoothness. You can even do fuzziness if you want. I don't always do it. I'll do a little bit. Okay, now I've created the mask. Cool. So now I'm going to apply the mask. You can apply the mask by clicking on the image you want it to be mask, select mask, and selecting this. Or you can just drag this little thing here. It is the same thing. Okay, so now we're going to pull some of the dynamic range back. How do we do that? Go to Processes, All Processes, HDR Multi-Scale Transform. Check these little two boxes, Lightness and Lightness Mask. I usually go for 9 layers. Sometimes 6 works better. On the California Nebula, 6 worked better than 9. So we just applied it by dragging onto the image. It's happening. It'll take a second. And then some of the detail is going to be back in that wall. So let's take a look. This looks really good. I'll go back. As you can see, there's like a white tone to this. It's much brighter when I pull this back in. It's just a very, very small alteration. So now that's kind of it. Now after this, I kind of save the image as a TIFF and take it to a different software. I do some of the color mixing. We're not going to do that here, but I'll show a result of what that looks like. Now when I come back after I do the color mixing, I just do this. I just go to Noise Exterminator, Processes. Again, a tool by Rusell Crowman. I invite you to, I'll put a link in the description for the tools I use. So Star Exterminator, Noise Exterminator, and Blood Exterminator. They just make my life a lot easier. Just drag it on top. Give it a sec. It's actually much faster with an RTX GPU, excuse me. The noise is gone. This looks really good. Here's before. See a little bit of noise, color noise, and all that kind of stuff. Here's after. Pretty smooth. So now at this point, we're done with the nebulosity. We gotta go to the stars. How do we do that? Well, if you remember, I stretched this image, and I need to do a couple of things before I do the stars. I need to remove the green, just like I did before. And in this case, I have magenta stars. So let's remove them. I invert the image, and you can see the stars started to be green. I do an SCNR on green, and then I'm done. The stars are good. Okay, so let's take the stars out and blend those two images. I go to All Processes, Star Exterminator. I select Generate a Star Image. With my Ricardi Hondas, I sometimes select this because there's so many stars you might need to do it. I don't need to do it in this case. I'm extracting the stars. Depending on your computer, your GPU, your settings, it might take 30 seconds, it might take 5 minutes. Have patience. These things usually take time. So, it's almost done. So what I'm trying to do now is extract the stars to use them as a star mask. I used to do this differently in the past, but I found this is the easiest and fastest way to do it. As Russell's algorithm get better, so does the star mask. So, stars are done. That was pretty fast. So, I go back and do undo. I bring the stars back in. This is my star mask, but it's an RGB image. Let's go to Image, Color Spaces. Make it a grayscale image. Now it's a mask. We're going to drag it onto this image to mask the stars. Now, one of the things I do, this is just my personal preference. You don't have to do it. I mask the stars, and before I move to the next step, I actually pull a little bit of the highlights. I'll show you what that is. So once I do this, it will brighten up the stars in the field. So these stars, after I bring the nebulosity back, will just be a little bit brighter, which makes a big difference. Now I go and invert the mask. So now what I've done is, I've selected all the stars and they're protected, and everything else is not. So now I need to take this nebulosity, put it here. So, how do we do that? Simple. We go to Processes, All Processes, Pixel Math. We copy the name of this file, paste it in here. It has to be a single RGBK expression. Oh, you can use Pixel Math for a lot of things. I just use it for this. Drag it onto the image and hide the mask. Presto, the stars are here and the nebulosity is back in. So let me do undo. This is the image we had before, which is really the stretch stack. This is the image that I got where I process the nebulosity separately and you bring it back in. So that's kind of it. Not that complicated. I rely on a couple of tools that really work. Now I'm going to move this to the 5th workspace, and we're going to go here in a sec. Okay. So in here, these are the 2 images I just processed. It took me less than 15 minutes. Usually takes me about maybe 7, 8 minutes, 9 minutes. This is with color mixing. So let me put these 2 side by side so you guys can see this. The thing I do is I actually do a bit more than color mixing. I like texturizing the images a bit stronger. So I'm going to focus on these 2 parts here. The center part, which I really wanted Jim to shoot to, and he did an incredible job at it. So if you look at the 2 images side by side, the one on the right, which we just processed together, is done with the default Hubble palette. The one on the left, well, I don't want to say I invented this, but it is definitely something that I've been playing with for a long time. If you look at my images, you'll never see it in this kind of golden Hubble palette style. It is more red because that's sulfur and hydrogen are red, so I wanted to do that, and aesthetically I like them more. Not just that, I actually apply a little bit more texture in the image, so you can see the darker parts of the nebulosities are more defined. Some of these pillars are more defined. Now, that's something that I've spent a lot of time perfecting, and I'll probably share that again when I get to my Patreon channel and in a much closer circle. It is something that I've spent a lot of time working on, so I'm not going to share it on YouTube, not just yet. So these are the 2 images. Again, let me bring back the one with stars. I think it's a pretty quick way to process images, and it looks really good. So now, one more thing. Let's look at why aperture matters. This is a 16-inch. Let's look at what a 12-inch can do. So I'm going to go in here, find an older image that I did, and I think this is it. Yes. So this is taken with a 12-inch telescope, processed in the same style, and just to make it apples to apples, I'm going to remove the stars. And I want to show the detail of why aperture matters so much. If you have a small telescope, a small chip, and you think you can take the same images as somebody with a 10-inch or a 12-inch, you don't understand the hobby. So here's the 12-inch. It is definitely a great image. It's not a bad image. It is taken with a 12-inch truss telescope by GSO, or TS Optics, branded as TS Optics, and a 16,200 CCD. The camera, even if I put the QHY600, to be honest, you're still kind of stuck with the resolution you have of your aperture. So, but when I go to an IDK 16, the details start looking a lot better. See the guy in the middle? We can start seeing pixelation here. You can start seeing the detail that you lose. Whilst in the 16-inch, this is very, very sharp. Now, with better seeing conditions, this would be even better. But Jim lives in the same Bortle situation that I do, a Bortle 7. We're lucky to be able to do these kind of images. And I kind of feel like it really justifies, if you really want to use large telescopes, this is why. The detail is incredible. And you can also focus on some of the smaller details, which is this little guy here. If you go into my older image, not as sharp, you can barely see it. In here, there's a star artifact for some reason here. The detail is much, much better. So this is why I like imaging with large aperture telescopes and processing data from it. It is always impressive. The details are always amazing, and it will never disappoint. Let me pull back the image that we processed together. I personally don't like the image with the stars, but let me just put it back in. This is the image we processed today. I hope you like my tutorial. If you have questions, comment, message me, whatever works for you, and good luck. Clear skies, and I hope you start loving your work and loving your images. I definitely got better at that. I think a lot of the times we can be perfectionists, look at something and know we can do better. At the same time, we have to appreciate what we've done and appreciate our accomplishments. Thank you again, and I'll see you in the next video.